Hello YouTube, this is Gora Radio Moscow here again with another beer review. Now I decided to do another Scottish one today, but this one comes from a very beautiful and rather rural part of the country. This is the Northern Light Pale Ale by the Orkney Brewery. Now for those of you who don't know, I always say for descriptive purposes Scotland looks a bit like a monster's head, but there's somewhere in Scotland, there's somewhere in the region of 800 different islands. Those in the west are known as the Hebrides, and you have the Inner and Outer Hebrides, that's whisky country, a lot of good distilleries over there. But just to the sort of very north, you have the Shetland Islands, and then the ones very close to the actual mainland Scotland and the Highlands region are the Orkney Islands, that little cluster of islands in there. But interestingly, Orkney Islands are very famous for their archaeological Neolithical heritage. They have some of the best preserved archaeological sites in Europe, and these date back around 5,000 years. And they also have UNESCO World Heritage. I mean, a lot of tourists come to Scotland and never think to kind of travel out with Edinburgh or Stirling, but definitely the west coast, the Highlands, the islands, the most beautiful part of the country by quite some distance. Definitely check it out. But interestingly, with Orkney, there is the Scarabray Prehistoric Village, which is little more than a mile away from this brewery, incidentally. But this village has, you know, standing stones, tombs. There's some really cool, really old stuff there. But this was actually only re-revealed to the world in 1850 because a very violent storm ripped up a lot of ground and things. So it's quite interesting to think that that prehistoric village could just be sitting there and we would have no idea it was there. But both Orkney and Shetland, incidentally, have a significant Norse Viking heritage. You can see this in Orkney in particular in the St Magnus Cathedral in Kirkwall, which is the sort of capital town, if you like, of the islands. But many streets also bear sort of Norse names. But incidentally, the Orkney and Shetland Islands only became Scottish in 1468, and the country's obviously a hell of a lot older than that. But getting on to the brewery itself, the Orkney Brewery is currently owned by Norman Sinclair, who owns a hell of a lot of restaurants and hotels around the country. I'll put the brewery website in the description, and you can see a list of all the different ones he owns. But the brewery is part of the Sinclair Breweries Limited group, which also owns the Atlas Brewery, which is in a place called Kinlochleven, which is sort of around the same region as Fort William, which is kind of right in the middle of Inverness and Glasgow. You would probably think by looking at the map that it would be a fairly quick journey, but knowing that part of the country, it will take at least an hour and a half or something crazy like that. But anyway, the Orkney Brewery was founded in March 1988 by Roger White at the old schoolhouse in Sandwick, Orkney. Now, the Atlas Brewery was founded in 2002 by Neil Cotton, and this merged with the Orkney Brewery in 2004 under the name Highlands and Islands Breweries. Now, this came about due to the retirement of Roger White and the subsequent acquisition of the shares in the Orkney Brewery by the Atlas Brewery. Now, Neil Cotton went on to serve as the managing director of the Highlands and Islands Brewery for a period of time, and he ran a number of changes at the Orkney Brewery, including introducing a very interesting lager, which I tried to find a bit more information about, but I couldn't find anything on it. But as I say, he served as the director on the Highlands and Islands Brewery for a short period of time between 2004 and 2006, when the brewery became part of the Sinclair Breweries Limited Group, which I mentioned earlier. But anyway, the brewery produces several cask ales and filtered beers in bottles, usually all the same ones. These are available in Europe and North America. Their other bottled beers include the Dark Island, which is a dark ale, Red McGregor, which is a red ale, Raven Ale, which is a bitter ale, Dragonhead, which is a stout. I have one of those, so I'll review that at a later date. And they also have one called Skull Splitter, and this is a strong ale. This one, incidentally, has a very interesting history behind it itself, but I'll divulge that in a later video once I manage to get a hold of a bottle. But each of these beers, like I say, are available in bottles, and they're also available on draft in the cask form. But they also have a seasonal beer that is called the I believe it's called the Clootie Dumpling. It's described as being a tawny beer. It's meant to have a very unique taste. I'll need to see if I can get a hold of that one actually. But the beers have won a number of awards, particularly the Dark Island and the Skull Splitter brews. You can check the link that I'll put into the website into the description. You can have a little look through the beers for yourself. But anyway, I'll just let you have a little look at the bottle and cap. This one's actually quite a nice looking bottle, I have to say. It's got a nice label on it. I'll just bring that closer so you can see. It's got a nice kind of beach swash scene on there, and you can see it describes it a 4% pale ale. As you can see, this brewery actually has quite a nice symbol you can see on the cap, a very sort of Celtic-y thing. But anyway, let's get this guy open and have a little look at him. This one actually, incidentally, on the back of the label also has some tasting notes, so you can have a little read at those before you do it. But anyway, let's get this guy out and give him a little taste. Okay, there we go. Right. You can see it's bubbling up a little bit. Let's just get it out and pour it. as you can see, it's a very kind of, it's actually a very, oh geez, that's pouring. Give it a little bit of an aggressive pour, give it a nice kind of fluffy head. Incidentally, yeah, the head on it's quite fluffy, not really bubbly at all. It's kind of crystal clear, no real, not so much in the way of carbonation, I would say. In terms of the aroma, kind of quite fruity actually, getting a bit of citrus off of that, I have to say. I'm getting the pale malts and the pale malts, some hops in there as well. It actually doesn't have too pungent a nose on it, which I've found. Some of the pale ales I've had quite recently have had fairly kind of pungent noses on it, but that's a trait kind of similar of Brewdog and things like that, I would say. But let's give it a taste, see what it's like. Oh yeah, the the citrus kind of dominates the taste in this one, I would say. There's some quite nice elements of breadiness in it. But yeah, mainly the kind of citrus is the first thing that comes at you. You get that feeling of breadiness in it as well. There's maybe a little kind of hint of grassiness in it as well, but I would say this gives way to the kind of hops at the end. The bitterness and the aftertaste is actually really quite nice. This has quite a nice aftertaste to it. But yeah, the bitterness at the end, just the right level. Like I say, citrus comes through, you get the bready elements to it, and then the hops on the finish. It's actually quite a nice beer. It's surprisingly light for an ale, I would say. It's the carbonation's kind of just right. It's actually very crisp and very kind of refreshing. This is quite a good drinking beer, I would say, actually. The brewery itself say that it's a good beer for drinking with either sort of heavy foods or spicy foods and things like that. They say it goes very well with kind of a lot of different kinds of food, so that's quite good. But like I say, kind of citrus flavour, a lot good elements of breadiness in there as well, I would say. Then the hops come at you in the finish. It's actually quite a nice beer. I quite like this one, I have to say. Definitely. I've also had the one that I described earlier. What was it? The Dark Island. That's actually a really, really nice beer. But this is actually very different. And I mean, they've done it really well. The Dark Island one, from what I remember, is a bit more heavy and more of a tasting beer. But this is a drinking beer, and I think it's always a good sign of a brewery if they can produce a drinking beer that's as good as their tasting beers. You know, this is a really, really nice pale ale. It's not the most kind of flavoursome pale ale, but it's a really nice one that you can just sort of sip on and drink and enjoy on a night. I'd say very crisp, very refreshing. It's good. It's actually a good beer for a hot day, and it's not like, in that sense, most people drink sort of the industrial beers and stuff. But this is actually quite a good alternative, I would say. A really nice beer that I would say I rate quite highly. But anyway, thanks again for watching my beer reviews. Like I say, I have a bottle of Dragonhead that I'll be back with, and I'll review that at some point in the near future. But definitely, like I say, check out the Orkney Islands, the Highlands, all that part of the country. Thanks again for watching my beer reviews. I'll be back with another one tomorrow. And please like, subscribe, share the videos, help me get my viewer base up and things like that. Thank you again for watching, and I shall catch you soon.